Welcome to the Synergy Podcast, the space where we redefine how we move, heal, and experience our bodies. I am Ariana Montanari, yoga synergy teacher, soap maker, beekeeper, and really advocate for a pain-free, pleasure-driven life. In here, we break free from the unspoken rules that tell us how we should look, move, and feel. And through intuitive movement and self care and deep reconnection with nature, we explore what it truly means to live without tension, pain, or limitations. So, whether you're a yogi, a seeker, or simply curious about stepping into a more liberated way of being, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Creating this episode was incredibly intriguing. I had to dig into my National Geographic collection to find two issues that really affected me. One was about the inflammation age, and the other one contained an article titled The New Science of Stress. So, in this episode, we will talk about what I have learned from these articles. We will talk about inflammation in the body and how stress affects us and how to deal with it, how to understand these two phenomena a little bit better. Remember, I am just a curious human on the quest for well-being and really, again, understanding our body a little bit better. So I will share what I have learned through my own lenses. Let's start with a question. What is the first thing that comes to your mind when I say inflammation? We usually give it a negative meaning, right? So in the holistic health world, we do everything to reduce inflammation. If you think of anti-inflammatory diets and pills and supplements. But I learned that the reality is way more complicated than that. Because even just the word inflammation is becoming not extensive enough to cover all the diverse aspects of inflammation, the more scientists learn about it. To put it in a very simple way, we actually need inflammation to survive. Our health depends on it. Our immune system relies on inflammation to activate immune response, immunity actions against pathogens. The X factor here is quantity. So when inflammation becomes chronic, it can lead to a whole new level of diseases, like heart disease, depression, Alzheimer's. It could even trigger autoimmune conditions, where the immune system attacks the body's own tissues. Reading these articles gave me a deeper perspective on the intricate relationship between the systems in our bodies. And over the past decades, we used to consider each system on its own, like medicine. If you think of, I go to a doctor that would just look at a certain part, a certain system in my body. But I see that this is changing. We are slowly understanding, we're getting insights on the fact that our body is all connected at a physiological, at a cellular level. Back to inflammation. Let's see. In the article that I read on the National Geographic, Luigi Ferrucci, a geriatrician and epidemiologist, explains how over the span of 25 years, more or less, research has found more markers to measure inflammation, from 5 or 6 to thousands. So we are gradually understanding the different expressions that inflammation can have in our bodies. Quoting the article, the emerging, now let me quote the article. The emerging consensus among scientists is that inflammation isn't inherently bad or good. We just need the right amount of it, depending on the situation. It is not something that we want to eliminate. It is something we want to learn how to control. Interesting, right? For me, it was a little bit groundbreaking to read this because I never thought of inflammation of something that we actually need. But to read this, it's not bad or good. We just need it in the right amount. It was like, oh, yes. And that comes again to balance in our lives, right? To understand what inflammation is doing and what it wants to tell us. So in the article, then they go on and see about how the different practices that are common to fight inflammation. So what about cold plunges, sauna, or plasma injections? These are popular ways to fight inflammation, and when it comes to cold plunges, scientists have not yet succeeded in, say, fully explaining or linking the benefits of cold plunges and inflammatory processes. They see that there is something there, but they have not really managed to make the connection. On the other hand, sauna and heat therapy could address inflammation and decrease the risk for cardiovascular diseases. They made a study in Finland with about like 12,000 people, and that was easier to prove compared to cold plunges. Something new to me were these plasma injections. So I'll explain it to you as, again, not a doctor, so just as a curious human. What happens is, well, this is a medical procedure, of course, and you get injected platelet-rich plasma, PRP, which is basically your own blood, filtered out of red blood cells. And as far as I understand, the medical stuff creates different composition according to the type of treatment. This is still very new, but it's so fascinating that researchers have found a way to cure our own body with our own blood. That's amazing. Of course, aging is another factor that works hand in hand with inflammation. And if you are listening, you know that when we age, and it can be already 20, 40, 50 years old, the body starts aching, feeling sore, stiff. You get hurt for like nothing. Oh, I'm lifting this chair. Oh, I'm closing this door, and something happens. You're like, oof, that hurt. Also, the risk for certain illnesses gets higher. So nothing new, right? I remember this summer I was talking to my cousin who is not yet 30, and I was just, telling her and her boyfriend how on Instagram I get all these reels, like when you turn 30 and you see a person with sore or stiff knees, and I don't know, have you seen it? Like the one where there is somebody opening the oven and the door is squeaking and tries a few times and then realize that it's not the oven door, but it's the knees squeaking and making noise. So that's what I'm talking about. And although I do not believe that, we can do better than having a broken body when we're 30, but this is what sedentary lifestyle is doing to us. Anyway, so my cousin laughed a lot and told me that no, she has never seen those because she is not 30 yet. So the algorithm was, of course, not showing that type of content to her. A little parenthesis, but let's say that in general, by the age of 50, the inflammation processes start rising, and even more after 60. But Of course, it is different from person to person, and somehow how we have prepared for that. And this is where, for instance, Yoga Synergy supports you very much, because we are starting already to take care of the body, thinking of longevity. How can we somehow last longer? What happens at a cellular level is that immune cells stop fighting off infections when we age. Other types of cells stop replicating, for instance. They stop functioning as they used to. And, interestingly enough, they start secreting inflammatory molecules that affect other cells and their functioning, so that they also stop working. Now, we have a clearer picture of what happens in our body. And the next question you might be thinking is, okay, what can we do then? Well, surprise, surprise, exercise is one of our best allies. It enhances, listen up, it enhances the DNA repair and improves cellular functioning. Even just 15 minutes a day can make the difference. So this is scientific results. This is what they have found as a cure, a help, a solution accessible to everybody. And it can be even free. You don't have to pay for medicines. Exercise and meditation or mindful practices such as yoga are shown to help also in case of stress. I mean, in case of stress, I think that in our modern time, we all feel stress at some point or another, if not all the time. Over the past years, the stress levels worldwide have dramatically increased due to the, just look around, the pandemics, so the conflicts, climate change, civil unrest. I don't know about you, but just talking about it makes me anxious. So, some things you should know about stress. And hey, this is not fluff talks, okay? Stress is real, and scientists are doing research on how it affects us. Turns out the stress affects our overall health, especially chronic stress, because it increases the risk for cardiovascular disease, diabetes, obesity. It weakens the immune system. But what is stress actually? I often talk about this with my partner, who's, let's say, he's a very practical man, a former elite athlete who learned to deal with stress in a very structured way. He sometimes really has difficulties in understanding how people can get overwhelmed by stress. Truth is, not everybody has the same tools and support network to process physical and mental stress. And it differs very much, in my experience, between women and men. Greg J. Norman, a leading researcher on stress, defines stress as feeling like you don't have the necessary resources to meet the demand for change. Let that sink in. Feeling like you don't have the necessary resources to meet the demand for change. Think of the times you feel stressed, overwhelmed by the situation. It's because you think, you feel that you will not be able to cope with it. You don't know how